Good morning, everyone. You're listening to Turtle Island News with Tracey Kennedy. Today, I have a special treat for you. We have a guest on today, Harrison Kennedy, international musician. Thank you very much, Mr. Kennedy, for coming in today.
Oh, you calling me Mr. Kennedy? Boy, that's a long way from when you used to call me when you were little.
Hey, Daddy.
Hi, honey. And the First Nation people are Sego, Saguli. I learned those things when I was a youngster, going up to Six Nations Reserve with a couple of friends of mine, Howard Loft and Leonard Mike. And we had a friend, Marty Rubinoff, whose father used to live in between the third and the fourth line. And that was the first time I ever had scone and things like that. We stayed at Bob White's house, and I was up there quite a bit. And our connection to First Nations people, honey, goes back a long, long way. Actually, you're the seventh daughter of the first slaves that left slavery. My great-great-great-great-grandmother, who escaped slavery and came to Canada with the aid of First Nations people. Now, here's something a lot of people don't know that was handed down, but this will be no surprise to First Nations people. People of the drum, I would call them. First Nations people and Africans are the only people of the drum. They actually use the drum for more than most people. We use it for talking, for music, and for things like that. But the people of the drum, when they left Mississippi, and then, by the way, the First Nations people were slaves, they taught them how to build mounds down there because the Mississippi River would overflow, and that's where the First Nations people would go and live. They showed them that, and then they made slaves of them as well. But they knew how to escape, not because they read. A lot of people like to think is the slaves left because they followed the North Star. Actually, some days were cloudy, so you couldn't look at the stars. First Nations people and people of the earth that understand nature, they follow the land. It was the land that led them out there. Now, even today, in some places in Ontario and all across Canada, you can be going down a stream and you'll see trees that are bent different than the prevailing winds. You know, the prevailing winds, for instance, could be from the north, but these trees are bent to the east. Those trees were markers. There were also rocks that were lined a certain way. First Nations people followed those things. Those were the things that brought them through the woods, and that's how we got up here, by following the land, the markers on the land. So that was really the Underground Railway, of course, was a reality. But our relatives, they came up and they escaped a little bit before that, and so this is why they use these markers in a certain pattern to come up here. So that's my, and besides, a lot of our relatives intermarried with First Nations people. You can check that out. There are many, many individuals who are in the entertainment business that have First Nations blood in them. And so that's a connection. It's pretty deep. So the music business, has been good to me, and the benefit that's coming up, honey, I found out that I had prostate cancer, and the reason why I mentioned it, because men don't know, cancer's a silent killer. You can look good and just get a pain. A fellow was telling me just this morning that a good friend of ours in town here, another entertainer like myself, he just came back from a trip, and his mother complained about a pain in her back. They took her to the hospital, and she had cancer in one of her organs, and it was all through her body, and she died suddenly, just like that. So that's the way it is. So when my two younger brothers told me that they had found that they had it, I thought, well, I better get checked. It was 2 years ago. So they found like one spot. Evidently, men have these prostate glands. There's one on either side. There's two of them. So one on the left had one or two spots. So I naturally, I kept checking it. They call it the watchful waiting. And then when I went back in October of last year, October, November, they found 5 on one side and 2 on the other, so it went to 7. Time to do something. I found out this thing called HIFU. It's high intensity frequency ultrasound. It's less invasive. It's been recognized by the Canadian government, but OHIP hasn't recognized it yet. So it costs a lot of money. So I decided, well, this is the less invasive because I'm an entertainer. I need to be out there working and making some money. I don't want to be in the hospital a long time. So I kind of compared that to the choices I had, and I thought I could go for this one. I've done a lot of research on it. You can research it yourself. It's called HIFU, H-I-F-U. And I needed to talk about this to men. Tell them, you need to get this checked out, man. Because the food we're eating is not our food.
Yes.
It's wrong. And I think this is what's messing up our bodies.
I'm so glad that you felt to come on and talk about this. Now, we've spoken about this before on the show. The Albatherm HIFU does not involve surgery, but instead uses a high-intensity, focused ultrasound beam, which is safely and effectively destroys the prostate tissue with minimal side effects.
Right.
It's very non-invasive when we know that radiation, most doctors say they won't take it. So it's incredible that you research this, Dad.
Yeah, it is. And, of course, the surgeons that are using it, making a lot of money on this other stuff, they're not, backing it wholeheartedly. But the thing is this, if you compare it, like this, it's going to cost me about $23,000, and plus, I'm going to be off of work for a while. But if you go and have the surgery, it's going to, that surgery probably costs the same amount of money to the Canadian government, right? And you're in the hospital beds. The being in the hospital is expensive. So who's paying for that? The government's paying. Who's the government? That's you and I. So it's probably cheaper in the long run, where the money's coming out of, not coming from you and I, but it's coming from, from people who can afford it. I would like to see this covered by OHIP. It's cheaper. If it was covered by OHIP, it would be cheaper and less invasive, and you're in and out in a day or two. So, what's the holdup? So that's one of the reasons why I'm going to even have, for instance, the head of Prostate Canada, Dr. Rocco Rossi. He's the president of prostate cancer from Toronto. They're just looking at their bylaws, but he's newly appointed, and they're going to have someone down there also at this benefit that's on the 9th. And my particular doctor, Dr. Orvan, very nice person. His wife is beautiful. His name is Janice. He's a past dean of urology at McMaster University. He's now the chair of surgery, and he's the fellow that's basically championing this HIFU. So, and he's been a surgeon for 32 years. So he's changing from how we did it to this way. So this is another indication, and he's had tests, and the test passed and was accepted. But talking to Janice, she says, well, we had this conversation with the Minister of Health, and it went nowhere. Of course, he's now no longer the Minister of Health. But this is how it goes. There's a lot of politics involved. We say politics. I'm saying politics in a negative way, where there's no money involved, or something, prestige or something. It's just like there's a cure for cancer. They say that basically comes from water. Believe it or not, that it's not going to go anywhere because they can't make any money on it. So anyway, that's what's happening. I'm staying positive. I've got a lot of friends, they're helping me out. It's great. It's going to from 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock in the morning. So
wow.
We're going to have some fun, man.
Yeah, it's been incredible how many people have stepped up and
Yeah.
are speaking about this, and
Yeah.
social media has just been incredible. And it was a big step for you to come out and
Yeah, it
talk
was.
to people.
It was because I'll tell you, for me, and your dad,
I do.
I don't like asking for help.
No.
And I'm not a trust, I'm not a person that trusts anybody that easily. But you know what? This kind of melted away from me. And I liked it. It was almost as if I was being undressed. I could feel it falling. It's like somebody poured water over me, and I could feel the water actually from my head going right down on my feet. And it was taking all this stuff. That other stuff was negative, man. I don't need it. So I said, why not talk about it? And then the thing that's happened, so many people have come forth and told me likely stories. I mean, even the people listening to this radio station, which I'm very proud of you, honey, that you have it, are listening to this, and they're getting this information, and that is what we're supposed to do as human beings, talk to one another. That's how information gets, our people, we have call and response. You can't go into a situation, and plus they pass stories on it. It wasn't written down, but they would remember it verbatim. And we're kind of losing that. First Nations people do it as well. And, you don't want to get the beautiful thing about the social media, which you're talking about, it's actually, in a sense, can be used for that purpose, which I think is a good purpose, putting it out there.
Yeah, I think so too. We've had incredible response from First Nations people all over. It's one of the reasons why I call it Turtle Island News, because I found out this place, North and South America, was called Turtle Island.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we're being simulcast by a station on Six Nations, Sugoi, everybody.
Yeah.
And there seems to be such an incredible amount of similarities when,
Yeah.
my co-host,
Right.
Chief Charles Two Dog, who's I'm on with him on Tuesdays and Thursdays, he's from the Lakota Nation.
Right.
And there's some laughter going on in to the chat rooms right now because you two sound almost identical, Dad. It's really funny. And a couple things you say are like, okay, here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
He says that all the time, and the more he's looked into his family, he realizes that some of them came up here too.
Yeah.
So there's a good chance.
Well, the truth of the matter is that we all come from the same source, which is God. That's where he came from. And, for me, God, who nobody sees and nobody can talk to directly, created the universe, the cosmos. The first thing that God created was intelligence, and that intelligence was a feminine force. The creation was a feminine force. The cosmos is a feminine force because it gives birth to everything else. And that's the reason why first people call this Mother Earth. Everything and all the things that the cosmos, which is that feminine force, created was her daughters. All the creation is her daughters. People should give thanks to the air. They should give thanks to the water. They should give thanks to the earth that they're walking on. They should give thanks to the animals that give us food. All of those things, because, and ourselves, by the way, we're created from that same thing. We're really not that far. Our ideologies are ideologies, but really our essential self is all the same. So, yeah, I'm not surprised that a person would be tapping into that and sound just like somebody else, because really we should be able to sound alike if we're in our essential selves, which is of course our souls, and our souls is made from that stuff of the universe which is created by God, and that's what I'm talking about.
Well, we talk about these things a lot, Dad, and, you and I, of course, for
I encourage
48
you
years.
as a youngster to put your thoughts down on paper. I give you a pencil and a paper, and I said, write what's in your mind. And you sure in heck did. You wrote stories. I remember you playing with the four boys in the little woods that was next to us, and you were the queen. And, Go there every day. We used to get a kick out of you because we could hear you, and they were just following you around. Your imagination was beautiful and so this is the thing about imagination, honey. It's the secret that opens up. The imagination. Without it, you don't get, because imagination is where the impossible things can happen. If you put your talent and your passion behind that, and then other people, it's like your radio station. Other people, this imagination that made you think of this, and other people come on board. And when other people come on board, and we join hands and do that, that's when it becomes strong. Simple.
It just shows how small this world can be. I know it feels like we're so far apart, and you turn on television, all you see is horror constantly. I've been calling it terror porn.
Yeah. Good word.
I get my sense of humor from my dad.
Terror porn. Yeah, that's a good one.
And they said, it's us sitting here talking.
Yeah.
Back and forth.
It's their opinions, Yeah. People are afraid to talk and to say what they like and what they don't like, And hang on, that's the boss calling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go right ahead, Dad.
So anyway, I was just thinking back, honey. I was thinking back to when you were a child, and I think I mentioned it before, but I encourage you to write. I encourage you to put your thoughts down on paper. And you did. You started doing it, and I remember your first. I mean, it did a lot of things. It helped you to write. Uh-huh. You became very good at it, and your imagination just opened up. And we had this little woods beside our house, and you and 3 boys used to play in there all day. You had these boys doing everything, building forts and building tree houses, and you were the queen, as I recall, and they were various things. They were soldiers. When they all had things that they would do, but it was all fantasy. I used to get a kick out of it.
The Manning boys, 4 Manning boys and another neighbor, and they were. One of them was the field marshal of the Legion of Demons.
Okay.
Sometimes.
Right.
Sometimes it was demons, sometimes it was angels, depending on his mood. Another one was in charge of these mythical creatures that he just made up.
Right.
And 2 of them were princes. And
all of these things wouldn't have happened if you hadn't felicitated it, honey. It was happening because of you. It was happening because you did this. You have a gift. You've always had this gift. Your great-grandmother had it. You're the 7th. You're the 7th. And you've always had this gift when you were younger. And it became so natural that it didn't even look... So the thing about gifts, they don't look like gifts because they just happen, And we never made a big deal out of it. And I just recall, going back and those wonderful stories that you used to write. So, and then actually you started to write a story, which I loved, in a little book, and your teachers liked it, and it's all that kind of stuff. So it was that. And I think we were saying something else too, and I can't recall what it was now. I got hung up on that. But yeah, imagination. Imagination. When I was talking about imagination, people being afraid to express their opinions. That's why I'm happy to see First Nations people speaking up, man. Telling people what's going on. It's like your grandmother used to say, you got to tell the truth to shame the devil. Because it frees you. It frees you from the yoke of lying to yourself or allowing other people to lie, and you're not saying anything because you don't think it's right for you to say something. No, speak up. And this is part of our heritage. First Nations people, African people, we used to talk to one another and sit around and tell stories at night. There was a fellow named Elmars who was First Nations person, and we used to go and sit in his house every night. Elmars had peg leg, and I used to love going there. Elmars would get all his kids around and make us pull the blinds down. He told one story about the First Nations walking down the third line, and he walked by the graveyard, And when he was walking on the road, something on the graveyard on the other side of the fence was walking along with him. Well, man, can you imagine what that was like to somebody who's like 8 years old and sitting at the floor? He used to tap the floor with his wooden leg, and then the story began. I loved, his idea of drama. Then he would say, so I started to run. I started to walk fast, and this thing started walking fast with me. I started to run, and this thing started to run fast with me. I mean, was those, when I recall the story, I learned about snakes. In the wintertime, they have these troughs, and they throw this long rod down it, and it goes a long way. It's called snaking. All of that stuff comes from the imagination. First Nations people do that, and I don't want to see that lost. It's kind of buried. They tried to bury it, and yes. to people talking to one another and telling how they feel, and laughter. They have something that the Africans have too. They have we call the signifying monkey. The Africans, the First Nations people have that too, which means like you can never get too big for your britches. So, that's what they'll joke about. They'll even joke about themselves that way. Africans do that too. That's part of it. Everyone is so happy that you came on, Dad. Oh, that's cool. How do you know that? Because I'm looking at them typing to me. Okay. Boy, these modern conveniences. Isn't it incredible? Yeah, we have 3 chat rooms up and running right now. To be honest, I have no idea how many people are listening because we're being broadcast on FM radio, on These Changing Times, on flagshipradio.com, on Maury Station in New Zealand, and Six Nations. So, well, they may remember, to jog some people's mind, just recently, there's been a commercial on TV. I don't know if it's still on or not. It's a Swiffer commercial. That's right. It's a tune called "Give Me Just a Little More Time." Well, that was the band that I was in with the chairman of the board. And so when I left Canada to join the chairman of the board from Holland Dozier and Holland, who wrote a lot of stuff for the Four Tops and the Supremes and things like that. And that was a very interesting time for me, actually. And it's helped because a lot of people remember that music, and sometimes I feel like I love country blues. I love the country blues sound. I like the acoustic sound. I like to use traditional instruments. So the banjo, for instance, a lot of people don't know. A lot of people say, "Oh yeah, that's bluegrass." Well, bluegrass, there were slaves up in that bluegrass. You know what I mean? And they brought an instrument from Africa with them, which is a banjo. The banjo it comes from that. Of course, they've added another string, they've made it larger, etc., etc. But banjo, that instrument is still being used. So I love the banjo, and I play that. My new album is called Soulscape. I'm getting down with that right now. As a matter of fact, it's going to be probably a little more funky, but still going to have, you're still going to hear, you're still going to hear the folks in it, man, that kind of thing. And the other thing is, here's something the First Nations people probably already know. I was talking to Edward Holland one day. Here's a groove that goes boom, 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 boom. Who doesn't know what that is? Okay? Bet you wonder how I knew. Heard it through the grapevine, right? Mm-hmm. I asked Edward, I said, well, that's a good groove. Where'd you get that groove? He said, that's First Nations. I got that's a First Nations groove. So this is the contribution to the North American music that First Nations people have made and continue to make to this day. So, like Murray and all them cats, you know that I've done a lot of shows with First Nations people across Canada, right? Yes, I do. I know that they play you on the Native channel as well. They play your music there. Yeah, and APTN. Yeah, and a lot of, so that connection is strong and continues to be strong and grows, and, I appreciate the fact that you're putting this on, honey, talking about the prostate, because, and the cancer that comes from it, because, a lot of people maybe pass away from something They call it something else, but it probably originates in the fact that they had prostate cancer. And by the way, they tell me it's the very same antigen that causes breast cancer. So, that's why it's important, I think, to get these things checked out, man. It's a simple test. It's a blood test. And they tell you got it. And then you can, make changes in your life. And we're too bloody obese. We're eating all this wrong food. It's not our food. It's not our food. We didn't eat that stuff.
Yeah, almost no one on this planet can digest wheat, especially now that it's been tampered with.
That's right.
It makes us fat and
Yep.
sick.
Yep. And they're feeding all this stuff. I mean, they're chopping up animals and feeding it to animals. Come on, man. It's ridiculous. I mean, so, and that's one of the reasons why there is such a beautiful thing going on where people are reverting back to, farmers markets and things like that. And a garden. Growing your own stuff.
Very much so. Your garden was rocking this year. You were telling me you had kale up until January.
It's never been dug up. It's that the earth in the backyard, my backyard, is old as this planet. I put something in there, and man, they went nuts. Oh, my God, what's this? Let me just grow as big as, where's the dinosaurs? You know what I mean? May not be no dinosaurs out there. Just black bears enough. But anyway, baby girl, listen, I have to run.
Okay, Dad, thank you very much for coming on today.
Thanks for the shout out and the love, sweetheart.
And I'll make sure that people hear about this week.
Okay.
And again, you can contact us on Facebook. You can contact The Benefit if you're in the Hamilton area. Also on Facebook, A Benefit for Harrison Kennedy. Mm-hmm. And I have to thank you very much, Dad, for all the stories you gave me. Viking tales and space aliens, and because of you, I'm still telling stories, so I love you so much, Dad.
I love you too, sweetheart.
And talk to you soon.
Okay, talk to you soon, sweetheart.